My first guest for this second webinar, we'll get this down. We just changed platforms, and I had a little trouble connecting because in order to start up, I have to hit a telephone symbol, which who knew you'd have to hit a symbol for a telephone to
Yes.
start a webinar. Jason, late in 2018, wrote a book, a fascinating book on the subject of waiting. And the title of the book, I'm going to put my piece of paper up here, is called Delayed Response, The Art of Waiting from the Ancient to the Instant World. It's a fascinating book that explores the meaning of time and waiting and how that's changed over history. And I think there are two compelling reasons to have Jason on today, because first of all, we are all spending a lot of time wasting now. We're not wasting time, we're waiting, I should say. Yeah. We're waiting a lot to see if someone can develop a virus or we can someday get clear. And we also, as travelers, wait a lot. We wait at hotels for our rooms to be ready. We wait in airline lines. We wait in security lines. We wait for Ubers. We wait for lifts. Jason is a professor at the University of Maryland in the Media Studies Department. Nice to have you here, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, your book, let me give the title again. It's called Delayed Response, The Art of Waiting from the Ancient to the Instant World. That subtitle just begs the question, the art of waiting. I didn't know that there was an art to waiting. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I think when we begin to think about our relationship to waiting, it's usually one that is driven out of frustration, anxiety, or powerlessness. And I think if we want to actually transform our wait times into something that's useful, into something that's beneficial for us, it takes a particular shift in perspective. It takes a particular kind of method to approach your wait times so they're meaningful for you. And I think there's a bit of an art to that. I think there's a bit of a transformation of perspectives, of shifting how you see the world and how you approach the world in really unique ways that I would say, yeah, absolutely, there's an art to that.
And how did you decide there was an art to it? Weren't you just as frustrated waiting as the rest of us are when we have to wait for something that we want right now?
Yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah, I approached this book with a deep disdain for waiting. I would say every time I would stand in line or anytime I had any moment of downtime in my own personal life, I would pull out my mobile phone and try to occupy myself. So that's how I approached the topic. And I came to the topic of waiting as a scholar of mobile technologies. I had been studying the rise of smartphones since about 2007, 2008. And one of the things that I found really fascinating with mobile phones was that people were using them for text messages quite a bit. And that always struck me as a bizarre kind of thing, because when I first began teaching as a professor in Washington State, my undergraduate students at the time were exchanging a couple of hundred text messages in a day. And I would ask them, why don't you just pick up the phone and call? Like, it's so much faster. Why are you texting? Right. And then years later, a scholar of Japanese popular culture made an offhand comment to me that kind of got me going further down this interest in waiting. He said teens in Japan are sending blank text messages to each other. So the idea is that if you're in a romantic relationship, your romantic partner will send you a blank text. There's no words, there's no pictures, there's no videos. And your job as their partner was to respond with as little time elapsed attention to you. And I'm paying so much attention that I'll respond with as little time elapsed as possible. Or conversely, if I'm not around and paying attention, not paying adequate attention to the relationship, then my response might be actually delayed by several hours. But if I'm really invested in this relationship, I'll respond immediately. So I began to think about the way that time is content and how our wait times become really important parts of our encounters with other people and places. And wait times really shape how we encounter the world. And I wanted to investigate that.
I cannot believe that that if you don't respond, you're a louse and you're not paying attention to me.
That's
and you're not really interested in me anyway. It couldn't be that you're in the shower or you're in a meeting or whatever.
Exactly.
Talk about some of these ways that people play tricks with time. And I know when I had you on my radio show, I told you about years ago, this American Airlines flight that landed. It was either Dallas or Houston, and American Airlines got so many complaints about how long it took the luggage to show up. And finally, American figured it out, because when you got off the plane, you went right downstairs and there was the luggage carousel. So American moved everybody's luggage down to a way distant carousel where they had to walk 5 or 10 minutes. and the complaints stopped. So tell us, you have some other examples. You've got, Disney World or Disneyland maybe, and
absolutely.
online things like Amazon. Tell us a couple of those anecdotes.
Yeah, and it really exemplifies your example, and the ones that I'll mention exemplify how wait times for us are really driven out of expectation. So the Disney example is that as you enter a line for a ride at Disneyland, usually above that line, there will be a sign that says, wait time 45 minutes, wait time. I was recently at Disneyland. I saw wait time 300 minutes. And so you enter that line with that expectation. Okay, if I enter the Indiana Jones ride right now, it's going to be a 300-minute wait. And what they do is almost always overestimate how long that will take you. So when you get to the front of the line in 45 minutes instead of 90 minutes, you leave that experience with a positive encounter. Like, oh, I beat expectation. I beat the odds. It was faster than what I had planned for. So that leads to a positive user experience instead of a negative one. Like, oh, here I am. I was expecting to wait 90 minutes. Now here I am hundreds of minutes later, and this is way longer than I had planned for.
And I hate this place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they build in those expectations. So it's really not about the actual minutes in objective terms. It's really about the human experience of how do your expectations align with your perception of time. So Amazon has done studies on the delays on their site, which I think is really interesting now that we're all online in this particular moment. We're all waiting for shipping. We're all waiting for websites to load as we're sitting at home. And around all of those encounters are certain expectations. So Amazon found that if on average customers are forced to wait about 1/10 of a second, they could lose up to 1% of their revenue because people have built-in expectations that this website loads so quickly that even if there's just a fraction of a second delay, that could lead to just negative user experience based on what the expectations are around that site. Now that I think is radically shifted in our moment of quarantine, actually, with Prime shipping being delayed and just shipping on sort of all of these things and everybody swarming the net. The bandwidth right now is really experiencing some lags right now. But again, we're building those into our expectations at this particular moment.
I used to live in DC, and the most dreaded thing you could ever do is go to traffic court or just go to get your license renewed.
Yeah.
Or to contest a ticket. You have a 5 or 6, 7, 8 hour wait. I don't know if it's still the same. When I moved to St. Paul, Minnesota, I had to go contest a parking ticket, and I expected 2, 3, 5 hours, whatever I did in Washington. And I walked in, there were 5 open windows with people saying, "May we help you?" And
Yes.
And they fixed the ticket, and I was out in 3 minutes. I mean, if I could have done a happy jig, I would have.
Yes.
But you're right, entirely the expectation. Now, if I'd moved from St. Paul to DC, I'd be taking hostages in that waiting room at the Washington, D.C. thing. So
yeah, undoubtedly. And for me, I grew up in Los Angeles, which didn't have a lot of public transportation growing up. None. And then moving to the Washington, D.C. area where there is a public subway, a metro, this to me was just absolutely extraordinary. And when I went to Tokyo to see how their metro system works and the timing of it and how quickly and seamlessly it moves, and came back to DC, I said, all of these expectations I had around what an efficient system is, I was so happy to just have public transportation in Washington, D.C., but to see how efficiently and quickly it moves in Tokyo was just really mind-blowing. And so my expectations shift based on my encounters with the world, really.
We have a question from Greg who says, "Jason, I haven't had the chance to read your book, but it reminds me of a Malcolm Gladwell title. Could you compare your approach to his, please?"
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I think Malcolm Gladwell is a really great example for me in terms of thinking about public scholarship, like thinking about how do you reach sort of a broad audience with your ideas. So Gladwell, I think, laid the foundations for a lot of the kinds of writing that we do on these topics, thinking about what is often overlooked. For me, that's sort of the power of these kinds of questions that we ask. Here is something that we've typically hated and overlooked. We just don't pay any attention to it because it's so disdained within culture. If you can pick a topic like waiting and dig into it, you can actually uncover so many interesting ideas about culture, the ways that we interact with each other. And for me, a lot of histories, I went back in time and looked at a lot of historical examples of weighting and technology. And so by picking this really mundane object and experience, I was able to really look at the world much more broadly and have a lot of insights about our everyday lives.
You said in your book, you suggest some ways that we could make waiting less stressful for us. And you suggest looking at time as, and I'm quoting you, I think it is you, a collective experience that intertwines the lives of people with very different circumstances.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think for myself anyway, as I began to approach the topic, whenever I would be forced to wait, my frustration is really around the ideas that somebody is wasting my time. Time is our most valuable resource. You can't get it back. And when you're forced to wait, we feel like somebody's taking that time away from us, our most valuable resource. There's nothing else like it. And when somebody takes that from us, we get really frustrated, very angry about that. I began to shift my perception on this as I began to think about the ways that my wait times might actually benefit other people. Like when I'm at the red light, that then allows other people to go through on their green. Or I give one example when I was at a grocery store on a Sunday, it was just slammed. Every line was just 8 people deep. And there was a couple of people in front of me who was paying her groceries with half food stamps and half cash. And she was making sure every single coupon was counted. And everybody in line was so frustrated. They felt like this woman was just wasting all of our time. Like, you're asking the checker to go through every coupon while we're all waiting here. We feel frustrated. And there's lots of moans and groans. And when I began to shift my perception and to begin to think of my wait times as an investment in her circumstances, I could empathize with her. We're very different at this moment in time. She has a totally different set of circumstances and is asked to use time in different ways than I am. So I think time is actually really unevenly distributed. It's not this objective 24 hours a day and you can be successful if you use it wisely or not. Sometimes there's structural impediments that make people use time differently. You have to take those 2 buses just to get to your second job, and I don't have to do that. You have a really different relationship to time than I do. So my waiting can be an investment in your circumstances, and I can maybe understand your life a little bit better by thinking about my waiting as an investment in you and your circumstances, and maybe I can fight some of those things that force you to.
Yeah. We have a question from Anna, who asks, now that we're in lockdown and we're waiting, not knowing when this will be over, have you got some ideas still about how we can mitigate the thought of at least another month of lockdown, maybe 2 more months?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been on my mind a lot.
Not killing other people is certainly a terrible way to live.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I've been thinking about this topic for a while. And it was a couple of days ago that here in the Mid-Atlantic region, Ralph Northam in Virginia put a lockdown on the state of Virginia, shelter in place until June 10th. So we have a 10-week lockdown. And for me, the feeling of claustrophobia that just came immediately when I heard that was very pronounced. So for me, I think there are a couple of things that we can do at this moment in time to think about waiting differently. First, our wait times are an investment in the social fabric. We are waiting at this time in our houses to help people we've never met before. It's to keep this virus from spreading. And that's an investment in each other, in total strangers that we don't know. And there's something really, truly beautiful about that, actually. The fact that my wait time benefits people that I don't even know,
Nice way to put it. By the way, Anna, who asked the question, is writing in from Rome. They know a little about wait time in Italy,
That's
and
right.
they know about the consequences of not waiting, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you hear a lot as well in this moment of time is, how are we going to use these wait times? What do we do now that we are being forced to wait? Now that we are all committed to this investment in the social fabric. We hear stories about Shakespeare, who wrote King Lear while he was in quarantine. We hear stories of Sir Isaac Newton, who was sent home from college in Cambridge for quarantine. And during that time, he just was sitting under trees, and then an apple fell, and he began to think about gravity in new ways. So there are all these discussions about, what are you going to do? How are you going to be productive with all this newfound time? And what I find is that actually this is not a restful time. It's not, I don't feel like I have an abundance of time. In these wait times, I actually feel scattered and overwhelmed. And what I would suggest, and what I argue in the very last chapter of the book, is that waiting in and of itself unlocks new modes of creativity. It shifts your perceptions. I would say take away the burden of trying to be an incredibly productive person during all of this supposedly newfound time, and let yourself wait. Put down the phone, put away the computer for a moment, and sit and let yourself wait. It will radically transform your perceptions of the world. It will unlock new ways of thinking, creative modes of thinking. It will hopefully bring you a little bit of peace in this moment of turmoil. I think just letting ourselves wait, letting ourselves be bored, letting ourselves daydream, giving yourself the permission to do that can really radically transform your perceptions, and hopefully help quell some anxiety, and maybe help you do some creative problem solving at the same time. Because there's fascinatingly, there is a part of the cognitive process of our brains called the default network. Some people call it the imagination network, and it is only accessed in moments of waiting and daydreaming. And this mode of thinking, really, you cannot access those ideas by searching for them. They only come when you're kind of sitting there waiting. So if you've ever been standing in the shower or waiting in traffic or about to fall asleep, and you have this really brilliant idea or a new way of thinking about things, that's the moment where the default network of the brain kicks in. So if we let ourselves wait.
I do all my thinking in the shower. I mean, that's a common American phrase. I come up with ideas in the shower.
That's right.
And then we're just happen to be waiting while we're showering.
Yeah, exactly. And the same principle applies, which again, I feel like with this book anyway, one of the questions I was asking is, if we as a culture are so eager to get rid of waiting, what do we lose? And I think one of the things we lose is that mode of accessing these new ways of thinking, the creative problem solving, the creative thinking that comes when we wait and we daydream. We allow ourselves to be bored. And I think that's really important at this moment in time, is to just sit and wait and let yourself wait, take away the burden of productivity. And actually waiting is one of the most productive things we can do right now.
Well, that's Anna from Rome says, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And she should know. How are you like the guru of waiting now at the University of Maryland, or in your family? Do people look to you for answers in this time of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I think so a little bit. I think once I brought up the topic to people, like, oh, I'm writing a book about waiting, or, this recently published book on waiting, everybody had a story. Everybody had some kind of interesting anecdote about their own relationship to waiting, whether it be in relationships where they were.
Let me interrupt. The first comment wasn't waiting. What? A book on waiting? Come on.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if they thought about it, they said, go ahead.
Right. Exactly. Yes. So once I kind of talked about, waiting is really kind of this lens into who we are. Everybody had some kind of anecdote about waiting for a love letter or a phone call from a significant other, or waiting for a job offer, or, all of these different ways that they've waited in their lives, and how that really came to shape a particular moment in time. And I think everybody at this time right now is similarly asking themselves, what does waiting mean for me? How can I think about this wait time in any ways that help me understand myself better, help me understand our social situation better. So yeah, I think so. People are asking these kinds of questions that they might not have asked otherwise.
Well, Jason Farman, I really thank you for dropping in. I'm sorry about I'm sorry to those in the room. I'm sorry that I was 8 minutes late getting in here, but we started on a new technological platform, and I didn't know I was supposed to press the little red phone thing to get into the room. And Jason, thank you for joining us. Let me give your book title again to folks. You can get it on Amazon. It's called, I want to get it exactly, Delayed Response, The Art of Waiting from the Ancient to the Instant World. And Jason Farman, Farman, is the author. And Jason, thanks so much for dropping in on this early experiment in webcasting that clearly I'm still learning about.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Terrific. Good luck on you during the wait.
Okay, likewise. Bye.
Bye-bye. I find his book fascinating, just fascinating. And in about 2 minutes, Johnny, or about 3 or 4 minutes, Johnny Jett is going to join us. He's a very prolific travel blogger. That's not his real name. Maybe we can get him to tell us his real name. I wanted to give you my travel tip of the week. If you had made reservations on Airbnb or VRBO, or is it, VRBO changed its name about 4 months ago. They don't want to be called VRBO anymore. They want to be called Vrbo. Okay, please make a note of that. No more VRBO. It's all Vrbo. Anyway, if you made reservations on or before March 14th, and for a date in between March 14th and April 14th, you are covered for a full refund because of extenuating circumstances. That would be the coronavirus. Unlike typical refunds from Airbnb, you will also get back all your Airbnb fees, not just the amount that goes to the owner of the property you're going to stay at. However, if you booked after March 14th, you're not covered by Airbnb's extenuating circumstances clause because you should have known better, because the COVID-19 virus was, the COVID-19 was already known. So you're out of luck on that. Now, over at VRBO or Vrbo, reservations before March 13th for a stay through March 13th and April 30th, you got two options. You can request a flexible credit, which you can apply to the same property next year at no additional cost. You have to arrange with your host. I'm reading from my notes here, excuse me. The second option is to request a full or partial refund if flexible credit doesn't make sense for you. Again, you got to negotiate with the host on this, although Vrbo is strongly encouraging property owners to give you all your money back. I don't know what happens if you rent now for September, and under September we still have all these extenuating circumstances, and they have the same thing. If you booked after March 14th, you're not covered by Vrbo's refund policies because you should have known better. But you can still cancel your refund and get a partial refund from the host if they will agree to it. Vrbo, however, will not give you back their fee, their service fee, which is not inconsiderable, but you can negotiate with the host. So it sounds like a process, a lot of negotiations. And I think you can be sure that both Airbnb and Vrbo are going to be getting lots of calls from people, and there are going to be a lot of angry people writing me and people like Johnny Jett, my next guest, complaining about not getting a refund. Other than that, you may have noticed this week that South Africa Airlines stopped flying. Vietnam Airlines stopped flying. Some airlines are going to go out of business. A couple already have. Here in the United States, the worry is really about regional carriers. Regional carriers are these smaller feeder. Well, they go to major cities because they're feeding flights into American, Delta, and United. Generally, those three big ones. Sometimes Southwest, but not really. And they may actually carry the logo of American or United, but that doesn't mean they're going to survive because they haven't gotten any money yet from the feds. We wait to see. Otherwise, we may lose a couple of regional carriers, which is going to leave some smaller and mid-sized cities in the United States lacking in airline service, if not completely, at least to some good extent. I see Johnny Jett is in the room. Let's welcome him in. I met Johnny Jett. When I met him, how many years, Johnny? I don't know how many years ago. I met him at what was then called the LA Times travel show, and he was working for, as I recall, he was raising support for a private school. And he came up to me and he said, "Look, I want to be a travel journalist like you are." And I tried to dissuade him. I said, "Listen, there are keep your day job. There are very few travel journalists who actually make a living." Well, what I didn't figure on was Johnny Jett was a lot smarter than I was, and a lot smarter than a lot of other travel journalists. And if you look at that professional microphone, that's what I'm talking about right there. He figured out early on that social media people care about it. And he started blogging, and he has a website now, johnnyjett.com. You can sign up there for his free newsletter that comes about every 4 hours, near as I can tell. This guy works hard. By the way, you should also know that his wife is also a blogger. Natalie is her name, and she writes on the blog travelissima.com. They have 2 young children. They live in LA, where we reach Johnny today. Hello, Johnny. Yep, we're not getting sound from Johnny yet. I'm not getting sound from Johnny yet. Let's see. Did you turn on your microphone, Johnny? I don't know what
now it's on. Sorry.
Well, now I promised people you'd reveal your real name. Do you want to do that?
Of course, I don't. My dad would be ecstatic for me to reveal my real name. It's Jett, Jet. One T. I'm not related to Joan.
You are not Johnny Jett. Your name is John Descala. And your dad.
Discala.
Okay, we have unmasked Johnny Jett in the first 30 seconds of talking. Now that's,
by the way,
pretty.
Let me tell you, everybody, that you were kind enough to meet with me. This is 2000 or 2001. I think it was 2000, and maybe even 99. Actually, I think it was 2000.
Are you talking 20 years ago? No.
Yeah. I quit working at the college in 2000. And that was my first job out of college. But I used to go to the LA Times travel show to watch you, Rick Steves, Peter, all these guys. And, I worshiped you guys, and I still do. And, but I reached out to you and I said, hey, you know what? I don't remember what I said, but you said, why don't you meet me for lunch?
Do what I did. And I said, no, you don't. You do not.
Yeah.
Want to do that.
And you actually, you bought me lunch at USC, which I won't forget. And you were, it was very kind of you. So thank you for taking the time.
John and I became friends after that, and we see each other as often as we can, but he travels a whole lot. I think your bio on your website is, I visit 20 plus countries a year. I travel to 20 plus countries a year, sharing my firsthand knowledge of reward travel credit card deals, travel tips, and more. So let me take this opportunity, since you've just joined us, to the people who are in the room. If you have any travel questions, Johnny can answer them probably without fail. I must tell you, Johnny, it took me 8 minutes to figure out the technology on this new platform that I didn't have last week. So we lost some people in the room because I'm sure they thought, where I got a black screen here. What is with this guy? But feel free to ask Johnny any travel questions you want.
What is my first time being on here too? So,
well, that's a pretty professional microphone you got there.
Well, I call into Leo Laporte's The Tech Guy every Saturday at 12:30 Pacific, and so they sent me this. I also have a big light in front of me, which so you can see me better, so it's not so dark.
You are brilliantly.
My glasses. You can see it off my glasses right now.
Yeah. In fact, when you step back a little, the picture became a little more. I don't know. Now you're clear. Now sometimes the picture gets not fuzzy, but just a little not as sharp quality as it is now. I'm trying to learn this along with you. Well, okay. So they sent you that. Boy, that's a major microphone.
It could be my internet too, and my son could be upstairs watching Disney. Although it doesn't sound like it. He's running around like a wild man. So,
how old are your kids now?
3 and 7 months.
How is it living 24/7 with them?
Actually, I am really embracing this whole coronavirus quarantine. You know what? Right now, I'm supposed to be in New York. I was supposed to be at a party last night, and whenever I go away, what's that?
There was no party. What do you find? Most people are asking you when it comes to travel questions? When is this going to be over? Which I presume none of us know. Neither of us know.
Right. Well, the number one travel question I get is, how do I get my money back from an airline? I get that all day long from readers, friends, family. So my best advice, I don't know if you talked about it earlier. Did you?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
No, but it's a good thing to talk about because, in the beginning, airlines just said, we'll give you credit for a future flight as long as you take it by the end of the year. Are the stories I got when I had to cancel my flights. But
so in the U.S., if they cancel your flight, wait till they cancel your flight. If you have a flight, like I have a flight in May right now, and they haven't canceled it yet, but I'm not canceling it because if I do right now, they'll only give me a travel credit. But if I wait and see if they do cancel, which chances are very high these days, then I can get a full refund and get cash back onto my credit card. And that actually just happened. I called American Airlines earlier today because I had a flight next week to go from Maui to LA. And it took me 2 minutes, literally. I spoke to the agent. She said, I had no hold time. She said it was really quiet today. And that, and she told me the same thing. She goes, you get a full refund right now because we canceled the flight. But for your flight in May that I was going to New Orleans from Toronto, she said, I would wait. And I agreed with her. And so anyway,
there was I think it was late last week, at least one congressman is demanding that airlines no matter what, refund the money. Don't just hold it for future travel.
Yeah, I just read that article. There was multiple. It was
I don't know if it's gotten any
Sanders, Warren, Kamala Harris.
They all came out.
They're all demanding it. The thing is, the airlines, I can understand their predicament. Everyone's canceling. And by the way, the agent I spoke to this morning, I asked her how she was doing. We had a real heart-to-heart talk, and she's like, it's difficult. She has to go to the call center every day, so she's nervous. Which I don't know why these airlines still have call centers. JetBlue lets theirs work from home, and they've always done that.
Right,
and that's the way I think that should be the future.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, she said yesterday was steady, a lot of phone calls, but it was all cancellations except one booking. Only one booking.
Unbelievable.
And of course, that's scary.
And as I know you're ready to say, the airlines don't want to hold on to your money because they need money desperately, and they don't want to give you back your $300 for future, but would rather have you put it toward future travel so they can hold on to their your $300. I understand that. You're right. They need the money.
I can understand that as a business owner, but the airlines made so much money. They're made, I think they made $15 billion, the U.S. airlines, in ancillary fees last year. And
right.
they were doing stock buybacks. They should have been saving that money, and then they wouldn't even have this problem about trying to get the money back to people. It's really the people who, like me, who I lost almost every sponsor. All the travel, everyone in the travel just pulled their money. And
from your website and from your newsletter?
Everything, yeah. Even though the traffic's up on the website, the ad money's down because all the advertisers have pulled out.
Right.
Or most of them. And
I have to advertise, so I don't have to worry.
Well, my point is, it's the little people who really need the money right now. So why should these airlines be able to hold our money? Because and when we didn't get the service that we wanted.
Right.
And so the other thing is, if the airline does pull it, which I heard United was doing this a lot. And by the way, they were one of my sponsors, and I'm sure they're not going to be after this. But, they were not giving the money back, even if the flight was canceled. So what you got to do is, if you bought your ticket in the last 60 days on your credit card, you call up your credit card and ask them to do a chargeback. I kind of use that as a last resort, but you know what? You got to play hardball with these guys, especially if you really need the money.
Good point.
But some airlines like American right now are actually offering some people a incentive for not canceling. They'll say, you know what, if you have a $300 ticket, instead of us giving the money back, how about we just give you a 20% reward credit if you book it at a later date.
So your $300
mileage credit.
So it turns into a $360 credit, or they give you mileage credit?
No, I think it's a $360 credit for that. That would be the monetary.
Right,
but
right.
I won't be surprised if they do offer, we'll start saying you let us keep your money, we'll give you double miles or whatever, which that might be incentive for people like me who fly a lot.
That's major.
I might do it, but these times we don't know what's going on. I was just reading a story now. This could be the new normal. I mean, that's what's scary about it. We don't know when this is going to end. They said it could be seasonal like the flu, but it's a lot deadlier than the flu.
Well, the new normal, according to Dr. Fauci the other day, was when the president announced, staying in place over this month, April. Dr. Fauci said, yes, I think it will probably have a travel ban till the end of the year. Not good business for Johnny Jett and Rudy Maxa.
No, I didn't hear that part. Was this yesterday?
It was 2 days, whenever he announced the April thing. I think it was maybe Monday or
okay.
Thursday. I don't know. Yeah, it was Monday, I think. Monday or Tuesday. And Fauci said, we'll have to look at a travel ban maybe till the end of the year, which would be, I don't know how business can take that, but they can't.
I read an article today saying that Carnival Cruise Lines has enough money for 8 months. Carnival Cruise Lines, they have so much money. If they only have enough money for 8 months, we're in trouble. And I remember, 2 months ago, the mayor of New York said, I'm afraid to cancel schools because if I cancel them, it's not going to be for a week. I have a feeling it's going to be for the rest of the school year, not only the school year, but the rest of the calendar year. And I was like, what are you talking about? That's unfathomable. But obviously they knew something that we did not. And,
I think what's becoming clear is the fact that so many states. I mean, I've got. Can I just say one thing? About an hour before we started this, I had MSNBC on, and the governor of Florida was literally standing in front of a microphone on TV camera saying, well, until yesterday, I didn't understand that people who don't have any symptoms could actually pass this disease on this virus onto other people. Yeah. And I wanted to say, my 9-year-old granddaughter who lives in France could have told him that weeks ago.
I just read a tweet to Governor Georgia, said the same exact thing. It's like, hello, these people are leaders. There are leaders. I mean, obviously they're lying. They're lying, number one.
Well, but why don't you make up a better lie? Like, I just thought I didn't want to hurt the economy. I didn't want to hurt the economy. It's more important. We didn't have a lot of signs that people, but to stand up and say, just occurred to me. Just learn that, you can pass this along, even if you're not obviously sick. So anyway, I think what I was beginning to say is, relative to your point of things lasting to the end of the year, that there's so many states that are so far behind New York, California, the state of Washington, and so on. And they're going to roll out over the course of 3 or 4 months, and airplanes and cruise ships. Those are people coming in from all over the place and traveling together. And so you have this constant feeding. Okay, here comes the guy from Wyoming who, was last to feel the effects of it, infecting or reinfecting or infecting people from New York who are through it maybe by then. And but you can't, I don't know how you stop travel. It's not just the American economy that,
it's the global economy.
It's the whole world. Yeah. And as Africa and India start ramping up in big, serious ways because their medical infrastructure is so, sorry, getting on my soapbox here, and you're the guest. So
no, I like to hear it. I mean, this is what I talk about with my friends. They talked about when they stopped the flights from China, which, I've heard from multiple sources. They only stopped the flights from Wuhan, and the U.S. carriers stopped their flights from China. So there were still people able to come in, but they're Americans and foreign passport holders. Chinese were not allowed in. And I don't think that really did anything. But
right.
Not only that, it's like I had a neighbor who just came back from Europe, like right before the ban, and I'm like, he came from Italy, and I was like, I don't want my kid hanging out with your kid right now because I just don't trust it. There's something doesn't seem right.
Right.
And let me get I'm Italian.
And that's right. You're Discala, right? We're talking to Johnny Jett, who is a consumer travel writer. He's got go to johnnyjett.com. You can sign up for his newsletter, which you'll receive regularly, and it's got a lot of great information all the time. You can keep up with Johnny and his father and his family, which is all nice. We have a question from Jean. She says her son was charged $6,000 for 2 one-way tickets from Paris to LAX, Los Angeles. Delta would not give him credit for the flight he had 2 days later when the president told U.S. citizens to return to the USA by Friday at midnight. So he was charged $6,000 for 2 one-way tickets from Paris to LAX.
Right. Okay. Well, the first problem right there is that they bought one-way tickets. They should have bought round trip. I think that would have brought the price down big time. Even though a lot of times when you're going to Europe, even if you're not going to take that return ticket, book a round trip ticket. Although the airlines do not like me talking about this because it's against their policy, but that price could have gone down to $1,000. But that's just for future travel. So this, I would just plead with Delta, write a letter to their executives, tweet them, tag people like Rudy and I, and other experts. You can also go to Chris Elliott, who's a consumer ombudsman, and he actually will go to bat for you and fight for you.
What's Elliott's, Chris Elliott's? Let's give Chris's
Elliott.org, ELLIORTT.org. I think it is.
Elliott, ELLIOTT, Elliott.org. And he acts as an ombudsman, Gene. And if you can provide documentation, keep it all a simple letter, what happened. He often has sway with airlines because he writes about this all the time, and airlines don't want to irritate Chris Elliott, nor do Johnny and I. Yeah,
well, Chris has a national column, and I think
he's in the Washington Post. Yeah, that's a very good idea. Besides writing to the executives of the airlines and putting some hashtag fails in front of the word Delta on Twitter, go to Elliott.org and tell them your problem.
And she's not the only one with this problem. I've heard it from many times. And that was one problem I had, when the president made that announcement, everyone just rushed home. You saw those 4, 6, 8-hour waits at the immigration when they came back, because everyone thought flights were just stopping. You could not get in, and people were just spending a lot of money on tickets. I heard one person paid $20,000 for a ticket.
Oh my God.
And then the airlines actually, I think all the airlines actually put a cap on it. Most they could charge is $1,000. So what they should do is they really should at least refund you up to they should give you $4,000 back, because they should only charge you $1,000. And even the day after the prices, I was looking at prices the day after that from Europe to here, and they were under 500. So it was a whole panic. And listen, I went on CNN right after that announcement, and they asked me to talk about it. I said, honestly, I don't know what. It sounds like you better get home.
Yeah, it was not a clear presidential statement. He said nothing about whether the flights would stop in 2 days or not, or what. Yeah.
Right. And then there was the whole issue with the cargo. But, I had a friend who flew back from Asia just a few days ago. And he said there was no line at immigration. There was no one on the flight. There was 19 people in the back of a ANA from Tokyo to San Francisco.
Right.
And they were back then they were saying don't wear masks. Now they're saying you should wear a mask. They just came out today. Even when you're breathing, they're saying you're transmitting it.
All right, we got a question from Richard Capter. He says, book and stay by April 14th, 2020 to keep your collected nights and any reward nights you haven't redeemed. Parentheses, you have 12 months from the last date you collected or redeemed nights. What do I do? I'm unable to contact hotels.com. I'm not quite sure what the question is. Do you understand that question?
I'm just reading it right now. Book a stay. No.
It sounds like he might have booked a stay for April 14th.
Okay.
And he's not sure what, or he's trying to book a stay in order to.
He's going to have to rewrite it.
Redeem miles to save his redeemed miles. Maybe that's it. Maybe he used miles to get it, and he's going to lose his miles if they expire after a year and he hasn't stayed anywhere by April 14th.
I'm not sure, but some good news about miles is that United has finally reversed their decision to charge people $125 to get their miles back. They just did this yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. So
if they had expired?
No, now they're expiring. So if you used a mileage ticket and you don't want to go, even if I think it was even on canceled flights, which is mind-boggling that they would have the audacity to do this. But if you use your miles to get them back, they were charging $125 per ticket. And
That's ridiculous.
They just waived that after everyone on the internet was just going berserk. So that's why I was telling Gene, you know what? Take the social media with your problems and write people like Chris who have a national column that can really put some pressure on these people. I mean, I just saw today, I was watching a local news here in Los Angeles, KTLA, and they were destroying Royal Caribbean because there was a nurses conference coming up on the cruise and they wouldn't refund the nurses the money. And the news was just destroying them. But I went on Twitter to tweet them, and I saw that an hour earlier, Royal Caribbean has actually said we will give the money back. But the problem was the damage was done. So these news outlets are already talking about it because they don't get up to the minute news. This was an hour, they could have been writing the story an hour before or whatever. And so, if you're a big brand like this, you got to do the
right thing. One last question I think before we say goodbye from Mark. He said, I had a home away rent. Oh, can you see? Maybe you can see it. Well, let me read it. I had a home away rental in Ireland from March 18th to the 20th. So that's 16 days from now. Yep. We canceled since there's a travel restriction, obviously. Home away said to work out a refund with the homeowner, but the homeowner has refused to refund us and has gone silent.
Okay. So I've heard this a lot from home away users. Airbnb, British. They're not doing, this was Airbnb's policy at first, but they reversed it. And now Airbnb actually, I think it was today or yesterday, said they're going to give $250 million to these people who rent their houses. So, because they're taking a huge hit, but there's only a few things you can do. You can just try and wait and see what will happen. Or you know what? You could say, I'm going. And there's a chance that I might even caught COVID on the plane, and then your house is going to be infected. So,
I'll be there. Keep the light on for me, right?
What do you want? I mean, they should be. I can understand where the homeowners don't want to lose that money, but
of course,
this is, again, you got to do the right thing.
They want you to show up. That's the question.
You got to do the right thing. They got to at least give you a credit.
Right.
At the very minimum, but they should be refunding it because we don't know when this is going to end. Isn't
HomeAway.com a British firm?
No, HomeAway is based in Austin, Texas, I believe.
Oh, it is, really?
And they were just bought. They've been bought by. They were bought by a big company. I think they might be owned by Booking.com, but I'm not sure.
Mark, I would not give up on this.
They're owned by Expedia. They're owned by Expedia now.
They are. Well, Mark, write the homeowner and say, okay, I'll be there. See you March 18th.
Again, I'm flying. Like they should be. Expedia really should be
stepping up to the plate
for these guys. Yeah. So again, right, I would give the same advice. Right, Chris? He's got a national column. Tweet all these people. Tag the brands, and just plead with them because they get.
Mark, if you just tuned in, John was saying write to Chris Elliott. Just go to elliott.org, EEEIOTT, elliott.org. And he's got an ombudsman service for travelers who feel they've been wronged, as you have, and and see what he can do for you. Here's the bright side of this, John. Anna says the good thing is that now people will read the terms and conditions, and new agencies are rewriting them and giving loads of flexibility. Yeah, flexibility for whom? Yeah,
for sure. The airlines are trying to rewrite theirs right now, so that they don't have to give the money back. So that's another problem. But one good thing about buying tickets right now is that they'll at least give you they won't charge you that $200 or higher fee for the major airlines.
Change fee.
Yeah. Southwest never charged it.
Free keystrokes. Yeah, they do.
But so that's advantage of booking now. But the problem is we don't know what's going on. I was telling people definitely book in July because I thought this would be over, but I'm not sure now.
I'm not sure now either. I just yesterday I saw a fare. I could come see you, Johnny, on Spirit if I don't carry any luggage and can board last. Although these days there's nobody on the plane, doesn't probably matter. But I could come see you for, I think it was $49 round trip, $39, $40 round trip between Minneapolis, St. Paul, and LA. That's more than the
right now. You can go LA to Miami on an American Airlines 777, a 777 wide body, for $35 round trip, and there's no one on it. There's no one on it. Literally, there's like five people in first class and maybe 7 in coach. But once you get there, you're quarantined and you don't want to take the chance, the risk. But it's just amazing.
You're going to a state where the governor just realized that people can communicate the virus even if they don't have any signs. That's not the state you want to fly to.
No, but. Again, some of these prices are like this for July, so that it might be worth taking the risk of losing $35 because if it does bounce back, that ticket's $350.
Well, that's what I've seen an article saying. Some aviation guy wrote an article that when travel does come back, they're going to start charging outrageous fees to make up money they lost on travel during this period of time, which I don't think is a good idea.
Fares will go up if it bounces back because they're all cutting capacity and people and routes, a lot of routes and flights. Right now, American used to fly between LA and JFK 14 flights a day. Today they're still flying 10, which blows my mind. But starting next week when they cut the flights again, they're only going to 4 times a week. 4 times a day.
I said, why does United have to fly hourly between Chicago and LA on small planes, put on large planes and fly less often, less of a carbon footprint, they'll make more money. It's silly to do it.
There's definitely going to be some advantages of this whole thing. I think the world will be a better place once it's over. And if it ends quickly,
nobody's going to want the middle seat.
No one's want the middle seat. And
I know no one's ever
but everyone will be wearing a mask. They won't be sneezing. I used to see people sneeze without covering their mouth or cough. I'm a germaphobe, and I've always been.
Well, I think I was thinking today that we have created a whole nation, a much larger cohort of germaphobes right now. I mean, every time I touch a handle on a door, I'm like, oh my God, there are germs jumping all over the place. I run in and wash my hands or whatever. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got the family there, and I appreciate it. And it's good to see you, even if it is virtually. But thanks so much for joining me on webcast number 2.
All right, buddy. Take care.
You take care too. Goodbye. JohnnyJett.com is where you go to sign up for Johnny's newsletter. And if you're an advertiser, his readership's up. Go ahead and advertise. Business will be coming back. And I apologize to those of you who signed on early or signed on time, I should say. And the fact I was 8 minutes late, we'll get this down. I'll do it much better next week. We've got a couple interesting guests coming up next week. I don't want to tell you their names yet because I haven't confirmed them, but I think I know who they are, and I think you'll enjoy them. So see you again next week, 3 p.m. New York time, East Coast time, noon where Johnny is in LA, and where I am in Central time, that would be 2 p.m. In Hawaii, who knows? Not many flights to Hawaii anymore. Take care, stay well, travel safely, and see you next week.